Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Avodah Zarah daf Lamed Beis. We're going to begin on Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top. V'cheres had rain. So on this, the Mishnah said on Chavtes Amud Beis that when it comes to certain things, there is an Isser Hana because it's connected to Avodah Zarah. And we discussed at great length wine and vinegar of Kachavim, which initiated originally was wine. And then the Mishnah says that Cheres Hadraini, this is also something which is not allowed to be used. And the Gemara is going to explain how it is somehow linked to wine being absorbed. So let's begin. So the Gemara more specifically wants to know my hadreini. What is it? So Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Cheres. This is an earthenware vessel. Shel hadrinus. This is referring to the army of the emperor. It says Rashi Kishiyaitza begaises malichni moi. So that when they go into the battle, they bring these pieces with them. So these shards were actually absorbed with yain nesach itself, which they would later soak into the wine, as we're going to explain. There was this virgin earth that was never tilled, was never used at all. And so they would use this to be able to produce very strong wine, and they would put it into these chivri, Rashi says, are these new earthenware vessels, and then it would absorb its wine. So basically, the earthenware had wine, very strong wine, absorbed into it, and then they would break the earthenware vessel into pieces, and then they would carry these pieces with them. So whenever they would get to a certain location, they would soak it in water, and then they would drink. So instead of it just drinking water, this way they were able to have some element of wine wherever they went. So instead of bringing wine, they basically had concentrated wine absorbed into earthenware vessels. So the problem is that these shards obviously were from Avodah Zarah, and therefore that's the reason why it's us Hana. So their first is like our third. It says Rashi, Yain Meshubach Shalanu. There is like our best wine. It just demonstrates how great their wine was. So can you use these shards in order to be able to support a bed? Let's say a flimsy bed or something like that, or a table, and therefore you want to stick the shard so that everything is smooth. So this question is right. So because the reality is you don't really care about that which is absorbed in the kli cheres. For this purpose, you just want the kli cheres. But the reality is inside is absorbed yain nesach. The question is, are you allowed to use it in this situation? Because again, really all you care about is the cheres. So Tashma, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yochanan, Chad Aser, Chad Shari. It's actually machlokas. He says it's aser because again, it doesn't make any difference, even though, again, these pieces of shard you're only using for the cheres, but because this is how they preserve the wine for long distances and times, so therefore it's not allowed. So Meisvei, so the Gemara asks a question. When it comes to Hadar Doirin, and Rashi says Liginin Katanim, like these small jugs, the Haruk Bo'is, which Rashi says is Chemis Rukba, the Henshel, or these leather flasks, Shel B'Chachavim, Yain Shel Kainis Behen Aser B'Shtia. If, let's say, a Yid puts wine into that, also to drink, however, you're still allowed to get Hana from it, which is kind of interesting because, again, maybe you would think that, okay, I can't drink it, so why would it be Mutter B'Hana? So we're lenient. So Hed Shimon ben Gudol, if Lifnei Benoy Shel Rabbi Gamliel, Al Rabbi Gamliel, regarding his father, Sheshasav Men of Akra B'Loi Hoydoloi. That not only is it Mutar B'Hana, but he actually drank from it as well, but he didn't agree to that. Noidish Shel Avik Chachavim, when it comes to these flasks of Avik Chachavim that were absorbed with Yain Nesach, Rabbi Gamliel Eimer Mishum Rabbi Yeshua ben Kafusi, he says that also lasted from hen shetichin lachamor. You cannot use these pieces of leather to make saddles for your donkey. Now again, you don't really care about the wine that's absorbed into this leather. You only care about the leather itself. So this is really an example of kimo al yidei davar acher. So we see clearly it's asr. So the whole idea is that since you're supposed to destroy the Avodah Zarah, so these shards, even though they only have the Yain Nesach absorbed inside, again the question is, can you keep it to support your bed, or in this case to make a saddle? Clearly you can't. So how can we say, even it's a machlokas, so chayra, it's poshut that it's asr. So understand, you had brought this whole story, but how come when it came to the kankanim of the chachavim, solisru lemizbin, it should be usher to buy, but we know it's actually mutter to buy their kankanim. So ma'ishna noidais, ma'ishna kankanim. Why are we strict when it comes to these noidais, these leather straps, this leather that you can't even alidei devarachar is usher, but by kankanim or so makel, you can even purchase it from that. So Marava, the issue with the noidais is gezer shemi avakim noidai. What happens if a Jew's flask may tear? Yetolenu v'yetvarenu al gabi noidai. You'll end up using it as a patch. In other words, it'll absorb with the yain nesach itself. It's not considered to be alidei devaracher. The concern, as Rashi says, v'yitin yeno shel v'chachavim tam b'yeno shel Yisrael. So your mom is going to end up having the tam keiker into the wine, and therefore, because we're chayshesh, we're concerned that there's a chashash that this may happen. Therefore, we say that you cannot use the noidais. Al gzeru. Okay, so that makes sense according to the one who says it's mutter. So in this case, we're machmer. However, if you hold you're strict in general, so then why are we lenient when it comes to the kankanim that's mutter to buy? So amar locha hasam leisli sur be'enei. Halcha isli sur be'enei. There's a huge difference. When it came to the case of the noidais, the actual isser exists because it's so strong. It's absorbed, but it's still in there. As we said, that it could even produce real strong tasting wine. However, when it comes to the kankanim, the reason why it's allowed is because there's no isser be'en, and that's the reason why we're makel when it comes to kankanim, but not by noidais. Okay, let's look at question 11. Madu asru laso shatiach, for your donkey, minoidois ha'akam, from these leather pieces. So the answer is because shemi yibaka noido, maybe your jug will get a hole. You have to let it be for noido, and you use the Avodah Zarah as a patch, and therefore it's not alidei davar acher. It's going to mamash absorb that itself. So why are we so lenient? Because kadkanim leisli sur be'ena. Hacha b'cheres isli sur be'ena. Cheres is something which absorbs, and therefore it's considered to be in the kli, and therefore that's why we're machmir when it comes to that, which is the same question as question TB15. If it rips, you're going to make a patch, so v'gam asur b'hana. Okay, hakula she'in ze be'en hu kimi she'eno mamuter v'gam b'naisim tam. Okay, that's not v'gam. I'm not sure why I wrote that, but that's really regarding to b'kankanim. Okay, it's not the kula b'kankanim. Okay. Right. So the loy haiduloi. So let's go back to. So what do we say? So he said, "Oh, I saw with the Rabbi Gamliel, the story of Rabbi Gamliel, that he actually drank it. So not that it's just mutar b'hana, but he drank. Then when it comes to the wine that comes from, again, this type of kli, asr b'shtiya, u'mutar b'hana. It says beferish that you're not allowed to drink. Had Shimon ben Gudel if they ben Osher ben Gamliel, al Rabbi Gamliel shasim b'menu ba'akla. They hitaka drank, and here's the key words b'hoidela, and they did agree. So my lo hoidela. What does it mean that they didn't agree? The kaimer hasam kol siyaito, all of his colleagues of a benai moidele. But his kids agreed, right? So, okay, fine. You're going to argue with your father? So, Iboy saying, alternatively, Guduluchud, the Guduluchud. So, you can see there's a difference between an aleph and an ayin over here. Guduluchud, the Guduluchud. Says Rashi, so, to this they agreed, and to the other one they didn't agree, and the other one they did agree afterwards. Okay. So then the Mishnah continues on Chaf Tesam Beis. Let's go all the way back. So it says, what else is Asr B'Hana? When it comes to, so Rosh Hashanah said, when it comes to these hides, in which Rashi over there says that they would tear open by the heart, and they used to do this for a form of Avodah Zarah, and they would take the heart out through the hole, which I mentioned there, Indiana Jones sequel. And then Rosh Hashanah says, "Bisman shin hikar shel ogel." It's only if it's round. That's for Avodah Zarah. If you see it's mashal, if it was like cut straight through, so then it's mutter, because that was not how they served their Avodah Zarah. Okay, let's continue. So on this, the Gemara says, "Tarabah ezu or lavav." What is this referring to? This skin, the hide of the heart. Kol shnikra going to get away if it was torn connected the heart. Also, the kador kimin aruba, that it's round like almost like a skylight, but it's considered to be circular. That is the way that they would do this ceremony for their idols. Yeshul of kairit dam aser. Furthermore, if there's a crust of blood, then that also will mean aser. Says Rashi, because biyadua shemachayim nikra. What they would do is they would do this while the animal was alive, not after it was already killed. Once it was killed, then if it was done, then that was for Avodah Zarah. Part of the Avodah Zarah was taking a live animal and ripping its heart out while it's alive. As we continue, Lamed Beis and Beis. Anal of Karadam mutter. Therefore, if there's no blood, it's mutter, because maybe all the blood, it was already after the animal was killed, and sometime after the blood was already gone. And therefore, it's clear that it wasn't for Avodah Zarah. Amr Rav Huna loshon oel shel malcha. It's only if it wasn't salted. But malcha aser ema malchu havirasai. Maybe it was the salt that removed it. So therefore, we don't know. Even if there's no blood, if you see that there is salt, the meat was salted, so then in that case, it's always going to be aser. Only if it's round. Aser mashach mutter. If it's elongated, it's mutter. Halacha is in fact like this. I'm going to buy halacha v'chad pligi. That sounds like there's an argument. So what's the difference? Gomer zamur sitahei. We have this in multiple places. It's not a song, right? It's the Torah is purposeful, and therefore it's that's all there is to say. Obviously, this Amoira who is obligated to point out the halachas like him, we know that there's a concept, the whole makam sheshana Hashem Gamliel b'mishtaseinu. Anytime we hear Hashem Gamliel, halacha kamaisai, halachas like him, with three exceptions. So the fact that he needs to say, the halachas like him, must be that he doesn't hold of that general klal. Fine. Basar hanichnas avodas chavim mutter. So let's go back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah tells us that when it comes to basar that goes into idol worship, it's mutter because it wasn't yet used for Avodah Zarah. However, yaitza, once it was already used and it comes out, it's awesome. And meshahu kizivche mesim. That's the din of Rabbi Kiva. Fine. And then it says a haychlin with tarfois, someone who is going on this pilgrimage for Avodah Zarah is also mutter. You're not to do business with them. Okay, we're going to see that shortly. Let's continue with the Gemara. So So man Tana, who is the Tana that says that it's mutter while it's going in? So Rav Chiya bar Abba and Rav Yochanan Deloy Rabbi Elazar, not like him. The Rabbi Elazar, Oimer, he says Stam machshavas avodas kachavim avodas kachavim. Even having a machshava is enough for it to be considered avodah zarah. So it doesn't make any difference if it hasn't been actually used, but the fact that it went in, that's enough. It says Rashi, V'chi shachta of the avodas kachavim b'shchitasai v'nesra. Because this meat, there was a machshava of b'shash shchita that it was going to be used for avodah zarah, and therefore that makes it asur. So we don't hold like him. At that point, it's certainly connected to Chachavim because it was already there. So Mani Rabbi Yehuda ben Beserah, he decided Rabbi Yehuda ben Beserah Oimer Menandak was Chachavim Shematama ba'oil, that it mamish has the same din as a mace, that it's matama ba'oil, that if you come anywhere in proximity of it in the same room, that you become tameh from it. Shnemar, because it says v'yitzamdu Baal Peor, that they attach themselves to the Baal Peor. V'yoicha zivchei mason ma mes matama ba'oil al takrobas chachavim matama ba'oil. Then, as we already saw in the Mishnah, hahoilchin with tarfois lasu loses v'loses imoyen. So Amr Shmuel oiv chachavim hahoil chatar bois. It depends. If we're dealing with an idol worshiper who's going to do their avodah zarah, to their pilgrimage, so bahalicha, while they're going, usher, you're now to do business with them. The azul mighty because as they're going to worship an idol and you do business with them, and they feel that they got a good deal or something along those lines, so then they're going to end up, because of this deal, you're going to cause them to connect to avodah zarah in Indian of lifnei yiver. But chazara mutter, because it might have a hava. However, once they've already finished whatever they had to do, so you can do business with them because it's done. They're not going to go and worship an idol. They already did it. So now that they encounter you afterwards, it's not going to make any nafkamina. However, pumfakert, unbelievable when it comes to a yid. Yisrael hayachut tarfus, if God forbid, Israel is also going to go to this place of avodah zarah, b'halicha mutter, dilma hadarbe. So maybe the fact that you still have some kesher with him and you show that you still want to do business with him, maybe that will be enough for him to be chayzer b'tshuva. V'loyazal, he'll end up not going. However, b'chazar aster. Once he's already come back, which means he's done the sin, we don't want you to deal with him anymore. Kivanas, we can allow him to give him an olive. The abikba, since he is attached himself, unfortunately, to this avodah zarah, mahadar hadar azal. He'll probably go back to the avodah zarah to give thanks again. Okay. I thought you're not even allowed to do business with him even when he goes. So it depends on the type of a yid. Ravashi kitanya hahi b'yisrael mumer devadi azal. If we're dealing with a renegade Jew, Rahman al-Atzlan, we're dealing with the Yisrael mumer, so in that situation we don't do business with him at all. Because he's probably not going to be a chayzer b'tshuva. We're talking about someone who is just nichshol. He has some potential of wanting to go to this place to worship idols. So then, in that situation, we make a distinction. Question 12. Be'elu min ho'afanim halol mutulas v'oseimo be'elu min ho'afanim aser. So again, if we're dealing with an akum, while he's going, it's aser. When he comes back, it's allowed. By Yisrael, when he goes, it's allowed, because he could do tshuva, hopefully it won't go. But if he's a mummer, we say no matter what, you still can't. And chazirasai, on his return, everyone says aser. Adkan.